Today in Inventor, we are going to take a look at how easy it is to use the rectangular pattern tool and the circular pattern tool to make this series of holes in this bracket. It's pretty simple and easy to use, but very, very useful. So to do this, let's go ahead and open a new part. And as usual, we're going to start with a 2D sketch. And to do this all the same, let's go ahead and make sure we're all clicking on the XY plane so that we have this oriented the same way. So once we have that, let's use the rectangle tool and draw a quick rectangle, kind of a flat rectangle. And we're going to type in the dimensions 6, tab, 2, enter. And so if we zoom all, we now have a 6 by 2 inch rectangle. So hit finish sketch and extrude. Now, I don't want it to extrude a full inch, so I'm going to change the distance of the extrusion to 0.1, and that's much more manageable. So go ahead and hit the isometric view by clicking on the house here, and that looks good. So now I want to go ahead and put a hole in this. To get a better view of it, let's click on the front here on our view cube. And again, if your view cube is missing, you can go to the View tab, User Interface, and make sure there's a check next to View Cube. Same with your model browser. If that's ever missing, put a check next to Model Browser. You need to be able to use both of them anytime during the program. So let's go back to 3D Model. I want to put a hole in the upper left-hand corner here. So instead of going through and adding a new sketch with a circle and then extruding it inward, I'm just going to use the hole tool and make sure that it's set to a simple hole with no seat, and make sure that it goes through all, which is usually the default, and make sure your diameter is set to 0.25. You may have something different. Mine defaulted to 0.25, so that's good. This menu over here may look a little different for you if you have a different version than I do. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and click where I want the hole. That's about where I want it, but you could just move it around just by clicking and dragging it if you click on the center. But I like it about there, and click OK. So now I have a hole. So I want to make a pattern of that hole all the way through this. The easiest way to do that is to go over into this pattern section here, and we're going to click on the rectangle tool. So really what it wants to know now is, what do you want to make a pattern of? So the feature you want to pattern, if you click on feature, is this hole here. So then you click on the hole. Notice how it lights up a different color. Okay, now it wants to know what direction you want the pattern to go. So if I click on the pattern arrow here for direction 1, I'm going to click along this top axis. So if I click on it, notice in my program, it started making the pattern the wrong direction. The arrow is facing to the left. I want it facing to the right. So to change that, just click on flip, and now it's facing the right direction. I'm going to change the number of holes I'm going to make, or the number of pattern counts I'm going to make, to 12. Okay, and unfortunately that pushed the pattern all the way off my object, but I can fix that too. Right now the spacing is set at 1 inch, so 1 inch between circles. I'm going to change that to 0.5. Now it fits. Okay, so that's good. The nice thing about this pattern tool is you can also go down at the same time with your pattern. So I'm going to click on direction 2, and this time click on this axis, and notice how it goes down. If for some reason yours went up, you just click the flip button and it'll go down. So this pattern I'm going to change to a count of 4, and I want to fix that spacing. So I'm going to change it to 0.5, and that looks great. So click OK, and now it's made a full pattern of holes, exactly like the first one. I don't really like how the holes are kind of not centered within the bracket. So I can actually go and change that pretty easily. So if you look over on your model browser, if you double click on the icon next to it for the hole, it goes back to my original hole, and I can modify that now. So I can change the size of it, whatever I want, but I'm just going to move it a little down to the left and to the right and down. You don't really have to move yours. I'm just showing that you can do it. And I like about that. And I'm going to click OK. And notice how it moved all of them down equally. So it's a nice feature. The other thing is you can change the number of holes after you've already done the pattern. I'm going to actually get rid of this last column of holes. You'll see why. So I'm going to go over to the rectangle pattern in my browser, and I'm going to double click the icon next to the words. Don't double click the words, double click the icon here. And notice I get my menu back up. I'm going to change this from 12 count to 11. So I've modified my pattern. So now I have this empty space here. I'm going to make the other side of this bracket on the face here. So let's go to Start 2D Sketch, and we're going to click on the face, and I'm going to drag the whole thing over a little bit and zoom in. All right, let's put a rectangle on the right side. So start up here in the corner, come down, and I'm going to go ahead and just type in 0.1 and hit enter. Okay, so it made a nice little rectangle on the side. Finish sketch, and I'm going to extrude that rectangle. It doesn't look like it's doing anything, but if you actually turn, it is doing something. So I'm going to extrude that rectangle. Right now it's set to 0.1 like the rest of it. So I'm going to change that to 6 inches to make that other side of the bracket and click OK. Okay, so now I've got what's starting to look like that other bracket. Okay, so let's start with a little circle knob in the middle. Okay, Start 2D Sketch, and I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to kind of try to find the center of this line here and just aim for somewhere right near the center of your bracket. Click and drag it out, and let's change it to, let's make it 1 inch. Enter. Okay, so now we have a 1 inch circle there. Hit Finish Sketch, and we're going to extrude that out, not 6 inches. Let's change that back down to 0.1. That's good. Click OK. Now we have the little knob there. Okay, so we're starting to look like the first drawing. Okay, so let's go back, and we're going to put a hole just like we did on this side. So this time I want to orient the object to the right. So I'm going to click on the right just so I can get a front view of what I'm working with here. All right, so go back to the hole tool, and I'm going to leave all these the same. I'm going to still do 0.25, and I'm going to put the hole tool right about here. So that looks good. I may move it over just a tiny bit. I just want it centered above the top of that knob. Click OK, and we have a hole. All right, so instead of using the rectangular pattern this time, we're going to use the circular pattern. So click on that, and you'll notice a similar menu pops up, and it's asking for features. Okay, so I'm going to choose this hole. That's the feature I want patterned. Okay, then it's asking for the rotation axis. Okay, you may have to click on the arrow next to it, but look for the rotation axis, and the axis it's going to rotate around is this knob. So I'm going to click on that, and notice how it automatically patterns my hole around that knob. It, in my case, defaulted to 6. I'm going to change that to 12. And I could even change the degrees to make it go halfway around. If I change this to 180, I could do that. But I'm going to leave it at 360 so it goes all the way evenly around, and click OK. So now if I go to my isometric view, we're really making progress, and we actually pretty much look like what we started with. So circular and rectangular pattern tools are really useful for these things. If you ever wanted to do this in sketch mode, you could do that too. If you ever wanted to go back to your sketches, you could actually go back and double click your sketch, and you can actually make patterns within sketch mode. So, you know, the same things are there. The rectangular tool is there, circular pattern is there. It's a pretty nice feature. So go ahead and play with this. Make your own object, make this object first, but then play with it on your own. See what you can do with it. There's a lot of features in here, but the circular pattern and the rectangular pattern are a huge time saver for any time you need a three-dimensional object to be patterned several times within one part. So have fun with it.